This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network. And joining me right now is Darren Lui, who is the President and Executive Director of Aptorum Group. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is APM on Nasdaq. Darren, how you holding up? Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Robert. Yeah, it's great to be here. Absolutely.
Great to have you on. How's the family? Everybody safe and sound? I know we talked offline. You're based in London, and it's lots going on there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're not far away from things happening in the States. I think everyone's kind of practicing this social distancing right now, and everyone's kind of working from home and hopefully waiting for this storm to get past. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope it's sooner rather than later. That's for sure. So real quick, let's start with a quick
Sure.
overview and history of Aptorum Group, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, sure. So at Aptorum Group, we're a biotech company. We set up back in 2016, together with myself and our CEO, Mr. Ian Yuen, based in Hong Kong. The company was set up since 2016, so just over 4 years old now. And really, what we do is we focus on unmet medical needs research. So we're looking at basically diseases around the world that doesn't have treatment or does not have very effective treatment. So through that stage, we've grown from basically very early stage preclinical. Some of our assets are now just about to move into human clinical trials now. So this year, in particular 2020, is a very transformative year for us. We focus on a number of diseases. I think overall we have close to 15 products in our pipeline right now, focusing across many different diseases, but we can broadly categorize them into three main categories. So we've got a first area which we focus on is in what we call the orphan disease space. So orphan disease, in other words, is some people refer to as rare diseases, which is we're a huge growth area, and we can talk a little bit more about that. Our second platform is in infectious disease right now, which is obviously a very hot topic and probably why most people are doing these virtual conferences these days because of the COVID-19. So infectious disease is also a very hot area. And the third area is in what we call metabolic diseases. So things like obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, those type of metabolic diseases is also a key area where we focus on. And on top of that, we also have a number of products which we're working on a preclinical stage right now. But really our strategy is to focus on, diseases that really doesn't have existing treatment right now, really makes a change to the world. And some of them, it's quite prevailing, especially in children, for example. Those are the type of diseases that we're very interested in and trying to basically work a solution for.
Got it. All right. So what would you say makes the company unique and different? Really the main crux of this question is, how are you going about solving these unmet medical needs that are currently out there?
Just to give you a landscape. So, for example, if we take orphan disease as an example, orphan disease right now in the US, the FDA has identified over 7,000 orphan diseases. And I would say 90% of these orphan diseases are currently untreated or does not have effective treatment. Remaining 10%, really, there's another of that 5%, so half of that 10% is currently undergoing various stages of clinical trials right now. So that's such a huge number of orphan diseases that are still untreated. Just to give you some statistics, 5 years ago in 2015, the US FDA have identified 2,500 orphan diseases. 5 years later, we're now in multiple times that number. We're now close to 7,000 diseases. On top of that, in China, on the other side of the world, they've also come up with their own orphan diseases right now. They're still playing catch up. They've shortlisted 2 years ago 140 plus or so orphan diseases that they would like companies to focus their research and development on, and also are constantly evolving their reimbursement regime to cover for these orphan diseases. Now, some people refer to cancers as generally, for example, oncology and cancers. It's just a combination of many rare disease combined together. So that's the way to also look at it. Now, we have a team, especially our head of research, who joined us, especially at the start of our Aptorum Group when it was set up. He came from Celgene and Novartis, and his background in Celgene, which is a company initially also focused on rare diseases, was key experience for us. He brings with him a lot of development expertise in looking at how we tackle orphan diseases. So one of the things we're doing differently compared to other companies is to look at a more of a systematic way in approaching orphan diseases. Now, you see that there's a lot of companies out there who do, very rare disease, and, have a single asset in the company, maybe one or two assets they come across, perhaps by chance, perhaps by their research interest back in the university. Now, we're flipping this around. We're looking at it more of a systematic way. So what we've now combined is we've taken orphan disease, and we're combining with a concept which is called drug repurposing. Now, drug repurposing has been in the States for a fairly long time. The US FDA have a regulatory process, it's called a 505(b)(2), which is specifically catered for repurposing drugs. What you basically do is take a FDA-approved drug or even a other regulatory agency-approved drug, and you basically find a new disease indication that this drug could act against. And there are a lot of examples out there that has this kind of profile. Probably the more famous one you hear is probably Viagra. Viagra is actually in itself is a form of repurposed drug. So basically, you're taking a drug that has an original indication, you're changing the indication and find out that it could be effective against other diseases. Now, the way we're doing this systematically is that we're doing it both from a computational method as well as what we call a wet lab validation. So typically, what we do is that we have a library of around 2,600 approved small molecule drugs that we have in our system. And we basically select the type of orphan disease that we would like to screen initially through a computational algorithm, and then we'll shortlist a number of candidates that we feed into the second stage, which is the wet lab validation process, which basically involves in vitro analysis, in vivo studies, animal studies, and then go through a very stringent intellectual property protection process. So we look at whether the asset could be patented before we then move into the US FDA's 505(b)(2) pathway. Now, from start to finish, we are expecting to bring an asset from discovery all the way into what we call the late clinical stage or phase 2 clinical trials ready in about 18 months. So that's extremely fast because typical a new drug development process would take you 10 years, in some cases even longer. We are taking this drug discovery process a lot quicker, targeting within 18 months' time. And the way we're doing this systematically is really to repeat this process again and again for other orphan diseases that we select. Now, there's no way we can screen 7,000 orphan diseases in a month or in a day. We still have to prioritize the type of orphan disease that we would like to screen. So we take into account how unmet the orphan disease is, what is the competitive landscape in terms of drugs available. Is it actually a pediatric disease? It's one of the factors we take into account. When it comes to pediatric diseases, the US FDA tends to have a more accelerated review process in approving that drug for clinical development. So we take a whole number of diseases right now. At the moment, we have a short list of 30 or so orphan diseases, which are split into two groups, orphan cancers, as well as non-cancer, so for example, genetic, immuno, metabolic orphan diseases. So we got this list of 30. We are going to consistently screen these diseases from now all the way to 2021. Really, our target is to bring at least 3 to 5 assets under this similar screening and development process into phase 2 ready by the end of 2021. So this is really our proof of concept platform. The first asset we have right now, which we are taking into the clinical phase in the second half of this year, is a disease called neuroblastoma. Neuroblastoma is actually one of the most common solid tumor in children amongst all the children cancers. The current survival rate, a 5-year survival rate for children that suffers from neuroblastoma is around 50%. So really around half the children do not survive beyond the 5-year period. And at the moment, other than standard chemotherapy, there's one drug available, which is called dinutuximab, which is a monoclonal antibody therapy against this neuroblastoma. Is still not ideal. I mean, as I said, the effective rate is somewhere around 40 to 50%. So what we see this disease in neuroblastoma is very meaningful. It helps children, especially very young children. It's one of the most prevalent cancer for infants younger than 1 year old, to really help them try to address this what we call the unmet neuroblastoma medical need for children disease. So at the moment, we are working on this program. We started it in early 2019. We've selected out of the 2,600 small molecule, we've selected one candidate now that we're going to drive this forward into the phase 1b/2a clinical trials, subject to the FDA IND process, of course, in the second half of this year as our first proof of concept. We have 2 other assets called SACT2 and 3 that we're also working on right now. It's also in the pipeline. We will be making some disclosures and announcements to our investors sometime in this quarter 2 as well.
So Darren, I also wanted to follow up with you on an announcement that the company made last week, I believe it was earlier last week on March 30th, talking about this collaboration with Covar Pharmaceuticals to use the same methodology, this repurposing of drug candidates to potentially treat COVID-19, the coronavirus that's going out there, and it's just been devastating right now. So can you elaborate a little bit more about the nature of this collaboration and what this means for the company?
Sure, yeah, sure. As you rightly said, COVID-19 it's impacting the entire world, and we felt like we need to do our fair share in terms of contribution to this to the world and to the society on this disease. And what we've done is that we were able to combine both our Smart Ag platform, which is our drug repurposing platform, together with our internal expertise of our infectious disease in understanding and attempt to find a cure, one of the cures, treatments for COVID-19 disease. So basically, out of the platform that we have, which is out of the 2,600 or so library of small molecules, we were able to do some preliminary studies and identify at least 3 potential candidates that shows interference against how the COVID-19 virus could replicate itself. We are probably not the only company out there doing a treatment-based approach for COVID-19, but we are pretty sure that with this deadly disease, it will require a multidimensional approach, from a number of companies, including ourselves, to approach this in a multidimensional manner. And really, our idea here is that we have to go through the preclinical work to do the validation in animals, in our cell culture, before it can actually reach the human clinical trials. But what we were able to identify, I hope we can identify, is out of these existing approved drugs, these 3 candidates where we can show some efficacy in the way we can stop this virus from replicating itself. And this work is being done in collaboration with 2 parties. One is our strategic partner, which is Covar Pharmaceuticals, based in Toronto. They have what they call a GMP manufacturing facility. It comprises of a team which is ex-Glaxo Wellcome and Patheon team people, so that comes with a vast experience in this kind of preclinical drug development process. We're also collaborating with a research institution here in Hong Kong, which is University of Hong Kong. By background, University of Hong Kong, the microbiology team there was the first team that discovered the 2003 SARS virus in Hong Kong and China. Right now, that team is still working very closely with the government regionally to actually give advice on how to deal with the COVID-19 situation. And that team itself, because you have to deal with the COVID-19, which is now a very deadly virus, you would also require a P3 certified laboratory to run those experiments. So this is in combination with Covar and University of Hong Kong, who have access to that type of P3 laboratory, which is extremely useful for us to enter into this collaboration to continue our studies for these potential 3 candidates. Now, obviously, it's still at the preclinical stage. We hope to be able to report back to our investor community and to the public on where we can get to in terms of our results over the course of this Q2.
Perfect. And what you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what's your full background? What were you doing before Aptorum?
Oh, sure. I've actually been more of an investment banker before I joined Aptorum. So my background is that I spent most of my career with Barclays Capital, both in their London team and the New York team in the capital markets side. And before that, I was the biochemistry graduate at the Imperial College of London. So actually, biotechnology and biochemistry was always close to my heart, and it was an area that I was always kept a very strong interest in. But through my banking experience, I get to know the capital markets world quite well, and also get to meet a lot of very interesting investors around the world. So currently my responsibility with the company is to deal with the capital market strategy and also, of course, the investor relations side of things as well.
Perfect. And then real quick, from what you can tell us, what are the 1 to 2 things investors should look out for in Q2 and then beyond?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And because we have, other than obviously the COVID-19 results that we were looking to make certain announcements towards the Q2, we're also working on some other indications. As I said, we have 15 products in the pipeline right now, and they're all moving at different stages into the clinical stage. We expect this Q2 to have a number of announcements and updates on some of our key assets. For example, our neuroblastoma asset. We have a second key asset, which is in a very deadly bacteria. It's called Staph aureus. Which is some people know it as superbug. It's called MRSA. And again, we'll be making some announcements in the Q2 around the progress on our 2 lead assets together with the COVID-19 as well. Yeah.
Perfect. So then where can my audience find all the information they need about Aptorum Group?
Oh, yes. And as usual with all listed companies, we have our investor relations website. It's ir.aptorumgroup.com. And basically, we have all our announcements or our news release, our presentations, both general and technical presentations on it for people to get a better understanding of our company and the kind of deadly disease that we're dealing with. And obviously, we welcome not just investors, we welcome collaborators or research institutions who would find share common interest in diseases such as COVID-19, such as the Staphylococcus aureus, and even neuroblastoma to come in touch with us to discuss possibilities to collaborate. And we are a global company. Although we are headquarters in Hong Kong, we're actually constantly on the phone with interested people around the world, in not just in the States but also in Europe, to look for collaboration opportunities. So we welcome that a lot.
Well, I'd like to wish you the best of luck. Thank you for joining me on this, Darren, and please continue to stay safe. And
Sure.
I look forward to meeting you in person one day.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. It was nice to be here. Yeah,
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you.